Welcome to the Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association, GBTA. I'm Mark Cuschieri, Vice President of GBTA, and I'll be your host for today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about GBTA's sustainability initiative and plans for 2023. Our guest today is Jenny Sabineu, Chair of the GBTA's Sustainability Committee, and Delphine Millot, Senior Vice President, Sustainability at GBTA and Managing Director of the GBTA Foundation. Welcome, Jenny and Delphine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark.
It's a pleasure. Let's dive straight into the discussion, if you don't mind. So, Delphine, if I can start with you, this is year 2 of GBTA's Sustainability Initiative. What have you learned over the past year?
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me today. And learning is the right word. It's been a real journey since we launched our sustainability initiative a year ago. And I'd say a journey that I had the pleasure to share with our leaders and volunteers, including you, Mark and Jenny. One key observation is that whilst everyone's motivation is real, there is a lot of confusion and really unknowns in the space of green travel. We conducted research last year that showed that the lack of harmonized standards is truly hindering progress. And I'd like to say that this fragmentation does not only apply to standards, it also applies to the efforts we see across the industry. There is a lot of competition in an area where we will only succeed if we pool resources and work together in the same direction. This idea of radical collaboration is starting to emerge, and it's something we really wish to promote with the GBTA Foundation and our Sustainability Leadership Council, which essentially gathers companies committed to join forces to help solve this challenge together. We have leading airlines, hotels, car rentals, TMCs, GDSs, and obviously the buyers, all working together. And I'd like to think that's pretty unique to GBTA.
That's great, Delphine. And I think you really highlighted an important point. This is an industry play. And I love the fact about what we've done over the last year and what you've done and the team is bring everyone together, right? It's an industry play, as I said. So that's great. So, looking at 2023, what are the priorities?
So we've been quite busy since the start of the year outlining the priorities for 2023 together with our Sustainability Leadership Council. And we've outlined 3 really objectives for the year. The first one is going to be to continue promoting this dialogue across the industry and with like-minded partners. The second one is going to be advocating for policies that can accelerate the decarbonization of our industry. And the third one is going to be around building capacity to help our members navigate the world of sustainable business travel with a focus on education and benchmarking best practices. And just to be clear, this is about identifying ways to minimize emissions while still being able to harness sustainably managed business travel as a force for good. So we see the way forward as deploying short, medium, and long-term solutions to reduce the environmental impact of each business trip that is being taken.
I really like the emphasis on the capacity building and definitely the best practice sharing. Peer-to-peer learning is obviously at the core of GBTA's approach. So tell us a bit more about this benchmarking exercise. I'm sure our listeners will be really keen to hear about that. And who's on the corporate advisory board?
Sure. So we established our corporate advisory board last year, and it mirrors our Sustainability Leadership Council on the buy side of travel. So we assembled a group of 10 sustainability experts and climate leaders from large corporations which rely on business travel to successfully conduct their business. These CAB members work hand in hand with their travel managers to find effective ways to green their travel programs. And it's actually our CAB member from Unilever who gave us the idea to conduct an in-depth benchmarking exercise. What we want to do is to identify in the short term what solutions are truly effective and can drive change today while pursuing longer term priorities. So we'll cover strategies that companies are implementing to decarbonize their travel program across the board, from better point of booking information, partnering with responsible suppliers, investing in low carbon technologies, as well as tracking and compensating emissions. And the final result and where we land will be a snapshot of best practices and also a pathway for travel managers to get started, advance, accelerate, and eventually lead the green transition.
Wow, that's great. I really like the sound of that, and I think that's really going to be extremely critical for us going forward. So, Jenny, over to you, as I know the Sustainability Committee also has had a very ambitious plans for 2023. Last year was already, I think, I'm sure you'd agree, a phenomenal accomplishment with the publication of the 12 modules of the Sustainability Toolkit. By the way, any insights on how it was received?
Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks for having me, Mark. We're so pleased about the results of the toolkit. I mean, as you know, at the convention last summer, we released the first few modules to the industry. So anyone, whether you are a GBTA member or not, could access the first few modules of the toolkit. And then later into November, we released the remaining modules. And super pleased that, we were able to see over 3,000 unique visits to the toolkit since the launch. A lot of those were in the, of course, the first few modules, but really there was a high quality of engagement in the, remaining modules around, greening procurement and, obviously what our members are able to access. So it was definitely a labor of love. And, I'm just so pleased to be able to be here today to, commend the work of all of the motivated volunteers that I work with on this committee. It was truly a huge accomplishment.
Totally agree, Jenny. And I've always said that, GBTA it's all about the volunteers, and the amount of volunteering we have, especially around sustainability, is fantastic. What you've already achieved. So kudos to you and the team as well. So what's your big committee project for 2023?
Yes, never a dull moment. What is next for this group? So we made a big promise, actually, you and I, Mark, on stage a couple of years ago. We talked about two main projects that we wanted to focus on. And so super excited we delivered on the first, which was, of course, the toolkit. And now we're on to the next one. So, it's the supplier sustainability matrix. And basically the key to this project is harmonizing sustainability criteria that is already out there for supplier selection. So we've divided our committee into different travel verticals. And so we're, working very hard to harmonize and consolidate the sustainability questions basically that are out there for the accommodations vertical, airlines, ground transport, and rail. And what makes this project really interesting and challenging at the same time is that really no one vertical is the same, when it comes to this sustainability criteria and the standards out there. And I say that because in some verticals, there's a lack of standards to pull from, and others, like accommodations, for example, I think we all know there are several standards out there. And this committee and GBTA and the industry, all of us, we have the opportunity right now to reach out and collaborate across all these organizations that are already doing such great work out there to assess the sustainability efforts of just our incredibly working supplier partners. So, we've been working with, GSTC, so the Global, Sustainable Tourism Council, Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, Travelist, the World Travel and Tourism Council. I mean, these are, what we're kind of coining in our project, our standard setters that are kind of these entities out there that are already setting some of these international and regional standards. We're not trying to recreate the wheel. We really want to work with what's out there and try to consolidate and harmonize really. So the goal would be, to help the entire global travel industry understand what information to look for from your suppliers and really preserve these standards to make it easier for both the suppliers and the buyers. So, I mean, as a corporate buyer, I will say, and Mark, I'm sure you would agree, it's helpful and would be helpful for GBTA to provide some direction to effectively be able to apply these considerations into procurement decisions. And I think the other thing that's really exciting too is that, some of the standards that are out there are, focused primarily on the planet. And what we wanted to make sure we did was compile both people and planet questions. And this gave us the opportunity also to collaborate with other committees like our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee within GBTA as well. So really exciting project, and we're super excited to release it to the industry.
Thank you, Jenny. I think the one thing and the point you just mentioned about, we're not looking to, recreate the wheel, and that's not the intention of GBTA. It's about how can we bring some great ideas or what already exists today to the wider population, right? To the wider membership, and create these standards, which makes it easier for everybody as well going forward. And I think that's for suppliers as well as buyers, and that's really important. And just touching on the matrix, is there an intent to evolve this matrix into an official standard or a scorecard? What will be the, I suppose, use case for corporate travel managers, Jenny?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, because I think that that's a really critical piece of this. I mean, first and foremost, our first step is to harmonize the questions. Again, this is an exercise that's needed to be done. I'm really pleased that GBTA took the lead on this. And really the next step is to kind of figure out how to implement it, what tool GBTA wants to release this in. I think that, we're looking at certainly releasing this into a highly interactive educational webpage that basically is kind of hosting this as like a library of questions, which is a term we love that one of our committee members, came up with this week. But the idea is to educate. And, Delphine said that earlier, we are all focused on education. We need to educate on best practice for the use of these questions, guiding buyers on, whether it's, basic to advanced use. I mean, the last thing we want is to release a set of questions that buyers still do not know how to utilize them. If that's the case, then we've really not solved the challenge. There's a variety of use cases, but, the industry really should be using these questions in their own procurement and assessment tools, including scorecards, upon the release. And our work is really to, help harmonize and educate on the best ways to use them.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for that. I suppose, a question for you, Delphine. We've talked about the importance of aligning, definitions and standards around sustainability, and business travel is understandably a priority for travel managers. So how is GBTA tackling this, especially around emissions calculation and reporting?
So that's a great question, Mark, and not necessarily an easy one to answer.
Yeah.
What we know is that harmonizing the way emissions are measured on an industry-wide global scale is absolutely critical to drive change, but we're not quite there yet. There are several avenues, and in the spirit of what you just said, Mark, earlier, not recreating the wheel, GBTA decided to join forces with two frontrunners in this field, with whom we just signed partnership agreements. And actually, Jenny just talked about one of these partners on the hospitality front. This is the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. A while back already, I believe this is 10 years ago, they developed a common measurement framework called the Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative. The acronym is HCMI. And it's really robust, and it's out there and completely open source. So what GBTA is doing is to help promote its wider use and uptake within the business travel community. The other partner that we chose to work with is Travelist. They are a newer organization, UK-based nonprofit, set up actually by Prince Harry, and they made considerable progress over the past 2 years on aligning sustainability frameworks across both the aviation and the accommodation industry. So we'll be working together with them this year to incorporate the perspective of business travel into the finalization of their framework.
So Delphine, I mean, everyone who knows me knows, advocacy plays a real critical part in what we do and what our members also want to see. So is there a role for governments to play here, Delphine? I mean, is GBTA doing any advocacy push on sustainability issues?
Yes, and Mark, you don't have to get me started on advocacy because this is actually my background. I worked for 15 years for a government relations consulting firm. So I do believe in the power of government outreach and advocacy. If the pace of change, I have to say, with governments is relatively slow in comparison to what we can achieve as the industry, it will eventually be critical to create a level playing field, especially with emissions tracking and reporting. So we've been very active in Brussels, Washington, and even in Canada to represent the voice of business travel professionals on the many legislations that are already on the table and also the ones that are yet to come. And I mean, this ranges from government initiatives to boost the production and use of low carbon fuel. I'm thinking about the SAF Grand Challenge in the US or RefuelEU in Europe, but also to supporting the development of rail and online booking of multimodal travel options that combine rail and air. I'm actually headed next month to Brussels with my government relations colleague, Shane Downey, to meet EU officials on all of these issues.
So talking about Brussels and DC, I understand that this year you're bringing the GBTA Sustainability Summit from Brussels to DC. Why is that?
So yeah, we're really excited to be bringing our Sustainability Summit to Washington, DC this year. It's a global event in its nature. I mean, sustainability is a global challenge and needs global solution. So we'll continue to rotate between key GBTA geographies to have discussion with the leaders in all regions as much as possible. Having the event in Brussels last year allowed us to have policymakers on stage. I mean, Mark, you were on stage interviewing the head of cabinet for the transport commissioner, and there was a clear emphasis about the importance of public-private partnerships. So we'll mirror this model this year with speakers from the Biden administration, for sure. And we'll be talking about the future of sustainable aviation, the potential for rail, the real cost of green and how do we pay for all this and finance the green transition, but also, questions that travel managers have around how to navigate the offset space, how to match reporting standards, and also what's beyond climate, because now we're focusing a lot about, emissions and climate, but sustainable travel is also about leaving a positive impact on the destinations and their communities. So we'll be talking about that as well, for sure. So please, everyone, mark your calendars for June 13th, Washington, DC, and we really hope to see many of you there.
Thanks so much, Delphine. And I think talking about if it can be anywhere like what we had in Brussels, I think it will be definitely an event not to miss. And I think we saw a sea change as well. And I recall that moment, hearing a government official and say, that there was a real value of travel. And I think the audience, never heard that from government officials. So, the issue is around carbon, not travel. We all need to learn that we've got to travel more sustainably. We all understand that. But it was just really interesting to hear that for the first time from a government official. So thank you. I look forward to Washington. So that should be great. And Jenny, let me give you the final word. I know you'll be recruiting new members for the Sustainability Committee later this year. What's your elevator pitch on why members should join the committee and volunteer their time and energy on what I think is a critical issue for our industry? Well, we all do.
Thank you, Mark. How much time do I have? So, no, I mean,
I've never been able to contain you for more than 3 minutes.
So, I mean, in all seriousness, take the opportunity to stand out at your company, the industry, level up your career. I mean, when I first applied to join the Sustainability Committee 2 years ago, it was mid-pandemic. I had just started working on the concept of incorporating sustainability into our program, like so many of us. And, my goal was really just to find a community that I could network with and benchmark with and educate myself on best practice for, what is a sustainable travel program. It has been such a valuable experience for me to see the return on investment and impact that I've been able to have with, again, this motivated group of amazing volunteers. I mean, not only for my own company, but for the industry as well. So, I mean, really, I would encourage everyone to get involved, ask a lot of questions. There's so much for us still to learn and do. And you can find the application on the GBTA website. So we'll be looking out for it. And certainly at convention this year, we will be looking for new volunteers. Thanks a lot.
Couldn't agree anymore, Jenny. And again, a real big shout out to all our volunteers. We couldn't do what we do today across the industry, across our membership for the benefit of them without the number of volunteers who give up, a lot of their time and efforts. And thank you once again. So I think we're just about run out of time on a subject that I know we could discuss so much more. Jenny, Delphine, it's been absolutely great. It's been really informative, and it's clear that you both have such a passion for the issue and a commitment to drive change. And I suppose importantly, the need to develop actions and solutions. And it really is all about that. Talk is cheap. And I loved hearing about the priorities for 23. It's really that next evolution, that next step of what we need to deliver for our membership. I'm sure our listeners will appreciate all you've shared with us today. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Jenny, Delphine, thank you for that. You have been listening to The Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association, GBTA. For more information about GBTA and its work, visit gbta.org and be sure to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening.